fact, when I finished my education, I was really hungry to start my professional career. And for me, it was also a lot about hard work. And I remember that there were three things that were very important to me. One, the possibility to learn. Two, the possibility to bring in my ideas, to shape. And three, to work in an environment with great people. And even today, these factors are very important to me.
So work-life balance was not on your list.
No.
Necessarily. And you, Michael?
It doesn't seem like that long ago, so...
It wasn't.
But what was interesting is that, well, I have a very international background. So for me, the sector, the industry I was looking for had to have an international background. So that kind of like, follows what the students have been saying.
Did you want to work abroad or just...
Not necessarily. It was more a company that accepted someone who came from an international background, multicultural. It was more looking for that type of environment. Okay. But I was more interested in getting a foot in the door and getting that first experience because I knew that would value my CV in the future. And I still remember it was the day where you'd go every Saturday or Wednesday and buy the newspaper, get those clippings out, get in the mail, and wait 2 weeks before you got an answer.
Right.
And it was those days of hard work. So the lesson is, never give up and keep trying. And I think these days technology has made things a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. And maybe even too easy, but we'll get to that. What about you, Alison?
So I'm very impressed by the forethought that my fellow panellists had on what they wanted to do. I must admit, I think when I was a student, I had very little idea as to what I was actually looking for in a future employer. I just wanted a job. And I was really more focused on looking for a company where I thought there was opportunity to do something, but I wasn't really sure what that was. So optionality, I think, would have been my... Honestly, if I look back as to my younger self, I didn't really know.
So were you guys surprised to see that our millennials, because they are our generation, we're talking about generations Y and Z, who have filled out these surveys, had work-life balance as a... Now, we will talk more about the millennials later, but initially, were you surprised that they had this at the top of their lists?
I have not been surprised because this has been a topic now that we have seen over the past years. And I find that the time and to have the balance is like the new currency. So this is something that we see very much in our day-to-day realities.
And you?
So I'm not surprised, but the reason I'm not surprised is more because I think it's important for everyone now, rather than I think it's particularly important for graduates. And if I look at the things which our employees are looking for from an employer, it's flexible working. So from that perspective, I can understand that graduates would see the environments in which this is operating already, and they would be more attractive.
Right. So this leads me to what are your companies in particular doing? What are you proposing as solutions to address this growing need, Michael, for example, at Vifor?
I think one of the things that's really important for us is to, when we talk to candidates, is to understand why they're particularly interested in the job and what we have to offer. So we don't jump into work-life balance, but we really talk about their main need. And what comes back systematically when I talk to all our recruiters are two things. One is tell me about the job and what it has to offer me and why is it interesting. And the second one, if I come in your company, will you develop me? And because most of our recruiters are from a young generation, they are able to talk about the work-life balance stories they've been through. So is this a fun place to work? Do you have time off? Do you have flexible hours? So that's how we try and engage with our candidates, is by having our young generation talk to them as well. That really works very well.
And what about you guys at PwC, Michaela? How are you addressing this?
So for us, flexibility is very important, being at the professional services firm. So we live by the credo, we expect flexibility, but we also give flexibility. And we do this with our flexible annual working time model, which is very attractive. And it also leaves a lot of opportunities so that individual needs can be flexed.
Okay.
And we also have a lot of flexible work arrangements. So this is something that people like. And we also talk about this, of course, because it's very much part of the deal when you join PwC.
Right. It's the nature of the job is such that flexibility is an innate part of that.
Exactly.
Is it the same for you?
Very similar, I think. Flexible working, to me now, I think it's a hygiene factor that you offer it, I think the critical thing is that people see that leadership role models it, because it's one thing to offer flexible working, but if people actually come and join an organisation and don't find that anyone actually does it, then, and if they see that the leaders expect people essentially to be at work, then it doesn't work. So for us, it's more about role modelling.
I think what we notice is that, life happens at work, and work comes with you back home. So how do you work with those boundaries which are not there anymore? And I think it's by giving people the time at work to have some life moments, value those life moments, like being a young mother, having to go back and someone is not well at home and take care of the child, but also understanding that sometimes if I leave early, can I finish what I'm doing back at home? And I think having understanding for that and being able to allow that to happen without controlling it in a very strict way is what this generation likes.
Yes, it's definite. I'm listening to you all talk, and I can't help but think of my own situation where I never would have had these conversations with my employees. When I started work, I was, similar to you. It was just, you were there, you were happy to do your job, and this discussion about flexibility. So it's so interesting that now it really dominates our conversations when we talk about young people and work and young talents. Now, another finding, of course, was that most of them want to work at companies with international profiles, which all of you fit, with less than 1,000 employees, which isn't, for me, a contradiction. Is it just me?
Yeah, I read the same and thought it's an interesting, and whether you want to have access to a global environment and brands and values which actually take the benefit of having an international presence, but actually that's quite challenging with less than 1,000 employees. So I wasn't quite sure how to square that circle.
I felt exactly the same, yes, when I read this. And I also thought, well, we are definitely more than 1,000 employees in Switzerland and across the globe, yet our experience is very international. But I couldn't quite understand where this limit of 1,000 comes from.
Maybe I can help.
Yes,
because,
I was going to say, so Vifor.
We're really lucky because of our size and being international. So we are 2,500 worldwide. But if you look at how we've got our offices set up, most of our offices are never more than 300 to 400 people. And what we really are able to offer is an environment where family and global come together. And I think what it allows people is to stay connected, know people, and know the human being beyond just knowing the processes and the rules. And I think that's an advantage of our size, and we try and use that advantage so that when people join with us, they get very quickly into the organization. So this notion of global family means...
So you found the solution. You worked it out.
Well, our size helps us, and if you use that, I think that's a way of doing it. And maybe, as you become big, is how do you keep size and the connectivity alive? That's what you have to constantly think about.
I think that's connection to purpose, isn't it? And I think you can make it on a very large scale, or you can do it on it's arguably easier on a smaller scale. But if you can manage to do it on a larger scale, then you can galvanise tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in your case, of workers to actually achieve the goals.
Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say that you also touch on a very important point, connectivity. I think people really want to have friends at work, and irrespective of the size, it's very important to feel these connections, to feel that you are part of a family, like you said. Right. And I think this is going to be, or this is the art. How can you bring this into your culture so that this is the feeling that transports as you go to work?
Yeah, I think every company should have their secret sauce in doing this, but you cannot fake it. So if you try and force it, people will see that. You can say it, you can put policies in place, but if you walk in a place and you immediately feel there's a family feel here, there's a culture feel, there's a connectivity feel, and that's the hard work. Day in, day out, you have to keep that culture alive. So I think there's no silver bullet here. It's just really making sure if that's the company you want, well, live it. And I think you were right about saying leaders have to do that, managers have to do that, and employees, on a daily basis have to feel that this is the work environment they live in.
Right. All right, and one of the last findings we looked at was, of course, this situation of the gender gap. Now, I know, right? I think I cringe a little bit as a woman, as a female, and I think out of the gate, young women are expecting to be paid less. What is this about? Is the glass ceiling already in place in universities, or? Whoop, no answer. Wow. Okay. No. I didn't know if somebody was going to jump in with something. So I'll start with you. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think we know from our socialization that this has also a lot to do with how women were brought up and the developments that we now see. PwC has also done some reports on this, which I find really interesting. And to your point, is there, does it start with a gender pay gap? I think this is something that we all have to address to really close this and prevent this. Now, what we are doing at PwC is we don't have this.
You don't have this.
No, because we also, when you start working at PwC, we have our salary system that looks into the different factors, and it doesn't matter whether you are a woman or a man. Plus, also to make this now more transparent, we are striving to get a certificate for equal pay.
The EDGE.
Yes.
Certification, yeah.
Sorry, with the salary equals...
Equal salary, yes.
Yes.
Okay, all
So
right.
this is something that we are now doing.
You're taking concrete steps in this direction. What about Vifor?
I think that the gender pay gap is something that a lot of people will be talking about now because it's really out there. What is important to understand that every company has policies, and for Vifor it's very important that the two things we can really control as an organization is what is your compensation policy, and are you sure are you making sure you've got equal pay and equal pay for equal work in there. And the second thing is, are you benchmarking in a fair way what the job is worth on the market? And you can control that because you can then make sure you're offering people the right value for the right job. The thing you can't control is what the individual brings to the table. And individualization is a wonderful thing because it allows potential to express itself, value, bringing other skills, and that is where the whole bargaining power starts. So there's a notion of you want to offer things and keep things, fair, but then there's an individual part which makes the difference.
And do you find but do females go in already undercutting themselves? Has that been your experience?
I honestly don't know. And I was going to approach it from a slightly different angle. So I wonder to what extent their expectations are set by the role models that they see. So one of the things that I'm particularly pleased that Zurich has is a 45-55 board mix of women to men. And we have 25% on our executive committee of women, and will improve. And we are the best in the SMI top 30 by a long shot. And I think actually that can help set expectations for people at whatever levels that actually they should be able to demand equality because they see that actually there is an equal representation at the top. So I think we have to approach it from all of the different lenses that we've talked about.
And something that I noticed also in interviews was that when it comes to negotiating the salary, that for men, typically a straight figure comes, whereas for women, they talk about first the importance of their job, what matters to them, and when you then talk about the salary, it's like, well, they are not really bringing forward the figure.
It's a clear number.
Yes, so it's more like a hesitation. And so I think this is also something that we can help, to also help women to be more confident when it comes to negotiating their packages.